I'm only giving you a broad outline. I am not discussing the nitty-gritties of the finances of the economies of the world. I am just giving you a broad outline of what the situation is. Now, what happens? When this happened, the dollar was going up in its value. People were spending heavily, but the amount of taxes which was not earned was not sufficient to meet the requirements of the government. And it found, and one more thing, if you perceive, people talk about the EU, the success of the EU. What is the success of the EU? But I think the US was spending approximately $1 trillion to have NATO, to protect NATO, and have its spending expenditures incurred all over the world, mainly in the European countries. So the security was guaranteed. When the security was guaranteed by the US, why should I spend money on my arms? I can spend it on the welfare of the people. I was able to give all the beautiful services to the people at low cost. And because I need not spend anything on defense. For digressing, whereas India cannot spend the same amount because it is not protected by another country for its protection. It has to manufacture its arms. It has to maintain a regular army. It has to maintain different types of, it has to maintain a navy. It has to maintain a air force. It has to maintain so many areas of armed forces so that it can protect its interest. It has to manufacture its own equipment, or it has to buy the latest equipment from abroad, because it does not have a godfather. Because India did not have a godfather, it found itself in a mire. It had to fight all sides to survive. I'll come to the topic later. I just digress from there to just emphasize that everybody talks about the EU, the clean roads, the beautiful water, the beautiful system. Why? Because there was a godfather who looked after them. And that godfather was the US. And it was spending $1 trillion a year on that. It had bases all over the world to protect its own interest everywhere. But especially EU, because it backed NATO, it had to support NATO, and so it was spending that amount of money there. Slowly, what has happened is, I'm not going into the nitty-gritties of how the deficit took place, etc., that everybody can read in the economics books if you go through the US economics books. And if you look at it, slowly they found they were getting into a quagmire. And the quagmire was the deficit. The deficit started, ballooning. And today it is a scary $40 trillion. Can anybody understand what is $1 trillion? India, we are talking about India's exports being affected to the US. It is just $80 billion. Whereas the trillion, there is a $40 trillion deficit in the US. That means it had been borrowing and living off its means, beyond its means. Now suppose you are a debtor, and now your creditor comes and says, hey, you repay me, I have given you $1 trillion, repay to me. Now, if I don't have that value equivalent to $1 trillion, what will happen? I have to spread my hands and say, I'm sorry guys, I don't have that money. So you renew it once again, and I'll pay you a higher interest. When I renew it, and a higher interest, that means the deficit again balloons. So if you look at it, I think some of the largest holders of American debt are Germany, Japan, China, etc. So they are the largest holder of American debt. I think India holds about $500 billion worth of debt of the US. Now, that is a scary situation for the US. The scariness is that they will not be able to meet their liabilities, the commitments which they are given, which they are bound, which they have, other people have willing to bet their last dollar on the US. If anything, if the American economy collapses, or they are, if the ballooning deficit is not, is not controlled, sometime the economy, it will burst. And when it bursts, it's going to hit the world hard. Because when it bursts, it means all the debt holding countries of the US are broke. Because they would have the $1 trillion. If it goes bust, how can a company, where can you recover the $1 trillion? From whom? From where? From what? So that is the scare which the world started recognizing over a period of time. And when they started recognizing that over a period of time that the ballooning, everybody started hammering the US and saying, no, 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 you are having too much of deficit, you should do something to control the deficit. They started blaming the US. See, if you look at it on a broader framework, the US was the last resort of exports for very many countries. World economies have survived only on the US economy. You could sell anything to it. And China was exporting, I think, did it $2 trillion worth of goods to the US. Its total export, I think, is $3.5 trillion or something in 2024. India's export to the US is about $80 billion or $100 billion. And its total exports is only about $800 billion. The $800 billion, China is $3.5 trillion. Same thing with Japan. So many countries export to the US, and the US had a free ride over the years. And all of a sudden, they found that if someday the economy, the balloon bursts, what is going to happen? If people in America used to say, the shit will hit the fan, and then it will be spreading. So there should have been a full stop somewhere. Somehow it should have been put a full stop, but nobody could put a full stop to it because everybody was worried. What will happen if the full stop is put there? Every country which held the debt of the US was shaking and shivering in its boots because if they are not able to recover their debts, their economies will collapse. If their economies, because their debt is not repaid, they hold empty paper. It is like a bond. Suppose you hold a bond in a company and the company goes bankrupt. What is the value of that paper? It is zero. Suppose you have a share in a company and that company goes bankrupt. What is the value of the share? It's not even worth the paper it has been printed upon. It has been burnt. Demonetization. When 2000 rupees and 1000 rupee notes were demonetized in India, what did it mean? It meant that the 2000 rupees and 1000 had no value. And when that happened, all those people holding the 1000 rupee notes, they had to burn it because it had no value. They could not go to the bank and say, I have 1000 rupees, give me something I want to buy a fan. Hey, go to hell. The 1000 rupees is worthless because the government is not going to accept your currency. The 1000 rupees is worthless. In the same manner, looking at $1 trillion debt, and you go to the US and say, hey, repay me my $1 trillion debts. And US says, forget it, man, I don't have the money. What will happen? That money which you have used to develop your own business, it is now worthless paper. So because that $1 trillion debt would have been used to finance your activities in your country. And when that becomes zero, you can understand the catastrophic effects of that. So that is where the deficit came into the picture. And it rose, the problem was highlighted. And somewhere, it hit a raw nerve with a few people. And that is what has happened today. Let us go take it up next.